Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. Right, we're going to move on to the second part of the Elspeth versus Tezzeret duel deck. I'm going to look at the Tezzeret deck now and see how that matches up against the Elspeth deck. Spoilers, I think it's much better. So let's just dive in and look at the deck list. So we've got 21 creatures, 8 artifacts, 2 sorceries, 4 instants, single planeswalker obviously, and then 24 land. We've got a mana curve off to the side there. Let's just dive in and start looking at the cards. So, obviously, our foil face card is Tezzeret. So 3 and double blue for foil loyalty. Has a +1 to untap up to 2 target artifacts, which is, I mean, just off the bat, that's a really nice solid ability. -X to search your library for an artifact card with a converted mana cost X or less and put it into the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. That is really, really solid. The fact that you can do that the second he comes in and search up potentially something that's got mana value 4 or less straight away is really, really good, and it goes straight into play is excellent, I think. And then his -5, which is like such a cheap ultimate. Artifacts you control become 5/5 artifact creatures until end of turn. So animates all your non-creature artifacts, makes all your other artifact creatures gives them higher base power and toughness. Tezzeret is just great. Like I will say, even though I kind of dunked on Elspeth's deck a little bit, like both two really good planeswalkers in this product, which is, I mean, why I picked up 2 of them. But of the 2, I think Tezzeret is Tezzeret has more synergy with what his deck's doing, because the deck is obviously just full of artifacts. Right, let's move on to his rares. So we've got a single Master of Ethereum, who we just recently had in Alara. Basically this deck is using all the best stuff from Alara and kind of like previous Mirrodin sets, really. So Master of Ethereum is 2 in the blue for an XX. Power and toughness is equal to the number of artifacts you control, which can be a lot because the deck's full of artifacts. And other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Just really straightforward card. Can really get out of control really quickly, speaking from bitter experience. Got a single Steel Overseer, 2 mana for a 1/1, tap to put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact creature you control. Crazy cheap with a crazy, really good ability, like that it's just a tap, it doesn't require any mana. +1/+1 counter on every artifact creature you control is it's just really, really good. This is a great card to include in here. So you've got so many artifact creatures in here. It's just an excellent card. Goes really well. And obviously you've got Tezzeret. You could double dip on this ability in a turn. Pentavus, who's a particular favourite of mine. So 7 mana for a 0/0, comes in with 5 +1/+1 counters. You can pay 1 and remove a counter and you make a Pentavite token, or you can pay 1 and sacrifice a Pentavite to put the counter back onto Pentavus. So this just goes really well with a whole bunch of stuff. You can obviously do this with the Master of Ethereum and make more artifact creatures, and then all the Pentavites become 2/2 flyers, makes Master of Ethereum bigger. You could, I mean, do a whole bunch of stuff with this. I really, really like it. You can chump block with the Pentavites, sacrifice them, put them back onto Pentavus. Just a really great card. I really, really like Pentavus. I think it's a criminally underrated card. It is expensive, but like, who cares? There's ways around it, actually, as we'll see later in the deck. Then we've got a Razormane Mastercore, so 5 mana for a 5/5 first strike, which is actually crazy hard for the Elspeth deck to deal with, because despite it being a mono white deck, not too much in the way of like first strike or like buff spells in that deck. So this is a real challenge for them to deal with. At the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice Razormane Mastercore unless you discard a card, and at the beginning of your draw step, it just bolts a creature, and 3 damage is enough to kill off most of the creatures in Elspeth's deck. So Razormane Mastercore again is like a really good, solid pick in this deck. Then we've got a single Triskelion, 6 mana for a 1/1, enters with 3 +1/+1 counters, and you can remove a counter, and it does 1 damage to a creature or player, which is again just really good, just to ping away and just kill off like small annoying utility creatures. So then we've got a Quimalox, 6 and double blue for a 5/4. It has affinity for artifacts, so it costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. So there is a little bit of affinity in Tezzeret's deck. That super balanced mechanic where your stuff becomes super cheap when you're doing the thing that your deck wants to be doing anyway. It's 8 mana, but you will never ever pay 8 mana for Quimalox. More likely you'll be getting this for like 3, maybe like 2 mana. And a 5/4 with fly, so it's just a big flyer as well, which again the Elspeth deck actually kind of really struggles to deal with. Single Frogmite, which is a shame there's only one Frogmite, but looks so innocent, but he's such a terror. 4 mana for a 2/2 with Affinity for artifacts. You'll cast him for like 0 mana or like 1 mana like so often. It's so easy to do. And we've got a single Esperzoa, so 2 and a blue for 4/3 with flying, so another big flyer. At the beginning of your upkeep, you have to return an artifact you control to owner's hand. I mean, if you return like Frogmite or Quimalox, actually you can't return Quimalox, not an artifact, but you return Frogmite, that's like such a small like drawback. Just obviously replay it straight away. You could do this with the Triskelion and replay it and reset its counters. You do this with Pentavus, like you get all the counters off it, make a bunch of Pentaphytes, then return it, cast it again, and just do that all the time. Just keep making Pentaphytes. Esperzoa is one of those cards. It looks like it's kind of a bit of a pain of a drawback, but it just enables like a lot of stuff in the deck, and I really like it. We got a single Clockwork Condor, so 4 mana for a 0/0. It comes in with 3+1/+1 counters. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you remove a counter from it, so it's like kind of a nod to like the old Clockwork Avian, Clockwork Beast cards from really early sets. It's fine. I suppose it's not the best card that would be included here, but like I suppose it is thematic. It is like a common flyer. I suppose it's all right. It's all right. Again, this is actually something you could reset with the Esperzoa, I suppose. And a single Clockwork Hydra, which is kind of the same thing. So 5 mana, comes in with 4+1/+1 counters. When it attacks or blocks, you can remove a +1/+1 counter from it, and if you do, it does 1 damage to target creature, and you can tap to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Oh no, you do have to. It's not a May. You do have to remove the +1/+1 counter. So that's a shame. So whenever it attacks, it is a 3/3. But it gets to ping something straight away, and it can sort of rewind itself, I suppose. It's all right. It's all right. It's another ping. It's kind of like a worse Triskelion, I suppose. And then a single Arcbound Worker, 1 mana for a 0/0 with modular 1, so it comes in with a +1/+1 counter. When it dies, you can put its counters on an artifact creature. Not just one counter. You can put all its counters on something. So if you do have ways of getting extra +1/+1 counters on it, all of them move across, and there are ways of getting extra +1/+1 counters in this deck. So yeah, it's all right. Kind of a shame there's only one. I would have liked there maybe to be 2, because it's just like a good little 1-drop, I suppose, but it's fine. This is nice, actually. The Serrated Biskellion. So 3 mana for a 2/2. Tap to put a -1/-1 counter on Serrated Biskellion and -1/-1 counter on target creature. So a -1/-1 counter is most of the times much better than just doing 1 damage, because it's like permanent. This is another really nice thing you can reset with the Esperzoa, like get the -1/-1 counter on it, bounce it back, do it again, and just keep doing that. That's an option. Like keep permanently weakening things. Obviously, if you don't do that, it can do the ability twice, but like it's still okay. Like the fact it can do kind of like lingering damage is really nice. Really like Serrated Biskellion. I think this is a reprint from I want to say like a Mirage block set. I want to say like Weatherlight. So I'm sure someone will correct me. Then classic Juggernaut, 4 mana for a 5/3. Attacks each turn if able, can't be blocked by walls. Doesn't matter, there's no walls in Elspeth's deck anyway, so it's just a big dumb beater. And then Synod Centurion is another big dumb beater, 4 mana for a 4/4. If you control no other artifacts, you have to sacrifice him. Such a minimal drawback in the deck that's full of artifacts anyway, but it might come up, I suppose. But yeah, just a big solid chunky boy. And then 2 Rune Servitor, 2 mana for a 2/2. When it dies, every player draws a card, which is okay. I mean, it's 2 mana for a 2/2, I suppose, in blue and artifact. Like, we take what we get, I suppose. And then Fairy Mechanist, so 3 in the blue for a 2/2 with flying. When it ends the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You can reveal an artifact from amongst them, put your hand, and the rest go on the bottom in any order. Another nice thing to keep bouncing and replaying with Esperzoa, I suppose. Like, you just keep digging 3 for an artifact, I suppose. So yeah, this is quite nice. And also then it's just a 2/2 flyer as well. And then a single Trinket Mage, 2 in the blue for a 2/2. When it ends the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less, reveal it, and then put it into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library. So you do have a few, from what I remember, a few trinkets. Obviously, got like the Arcbound Worker. You do have some artifact lands in here as well, which obviously have a mana value of 1 or less. Yeah, there's actually like a fair amount he can search up. Like, obviously nothing super exciting, nothing like a crazy combo piece, but like has enough utility. Like, at the very least, he can search up one of the artifact lands. So yeah, he's all right. And then an assembly worker, so 3 mana for a 2/2. Tap to give an assembly worker +1/+1 turn. So it's kind of annoying. There's only one of these in here, and it's got an ability that cares about assembly workers. But as we'll see when we get to the lands, there is a very, very small interaction with one of those lands. We've also got a Silver Mer, so 2 for a 1/1, taps to give you blue, fine as a mana dork. Single Steel Wall, just a nice early game blocker. Right, and then non-creature spells. So we've got a Argivian Restoration, which is again is another reprint, I think from Weatherlight. So 2 and double blue to return artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's reanimate, but just for artifacts, which is really really nice because obviously you've got some discard outlets in the deck. You've got Razormane Mastercore, you've got the next card as well. So the fact you could use this to get something like Razormane Mastercore, you get Pentavus back for nice and cheap is pretty good. Got 2 Thirst for Knowledge, 2 in the blue. You draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact card, which obviously goes nicely with the Argivian Restoration. Drawing 3 at instant speed is quite nice for only 3 as well. You do have to discard something, but say like it's such I think a minimum drawback. You've got a whole bunch of artifacts in the deck. You could easily pitch one of them, and it wouldn't be so bad. And then you've also got Thoughtcast, which is 4 in a blue, which has affinity. For artifacts, you draw 2 cards. So potentially drawing 2 for any 1 blue mana is really, really good. I say even if you cast this for like 2, or like if you get this down to 3, it's fine. It's divination. If you get cheaper than that, then it's amazing, and it's so easy to get it cheaper than 3. And then Echoing Truth, which is a fantastic bounce spell. So there was a whole cycle of these echoings, and Echoing Truth I think is by far the best one. So 1 in a blue, instant speed, return a non-land permanent and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent to their owner's hand. So this, it's a shame there's only one, but it does absolutely hard counter Elspeth's deck that makes a bunch of soldier tokens because obviously they all share the same name. They're all soldiers. So you just bounce a bunch of tokens at once. It's really, really good. And it costs exactly the same as like Disperse or Into the Royal or something, which is again like 1 in a blue and it bounces a non-land permanent. The fact this can get multiple things is so good. It's got so much value. It is definitely undercosted for what it does. It should, I think, I love this card, but like I would be the first to say this should probably cost like 1 or maybe even 2 more, honestly. Then we've got a single foil, 2 in double blue. You can discard an island and another card rather than play foil's mana cost, and you just counter card spell. So it's a potential free counter spell. I will say these dual decks have really had a theme of like reprinting all the like the free pitch spells from like Mercadian Masks block, all these because in Garrick and Liliana we had Snuff Out and Invigorate. So obviously we're just doing a round of reprinting all the free spells. But yeah, foil is obviously great, so it's a free counter spell potentially, which is fantastic. And then Ether Spell Bomb, one of my favorites of the spell bombs. So 1 mana, you can either pay a blue and sacrifice to return a creature to owner's hand, or pay 1 and sacrifice to draw a card. Another thing actually that the Trinket Mage can search up, and it's just like it's just great, isn't it? It's either draw a card or just an unsummon effect. It's just really like Ether Spell Bomb. Right, so in the Elspeth deck, I said that this product was used to kind of like preview some cards from the upcoming Scars and Mirrodin set. So Elspeth's deck got just like a random 2/2 flyer that gains you some life when it comes in, nothing else. Tezzeret's deck got Contagion Clasp, which is like so much better. It's actually tragic how much better it is. So 2 mana, when Contagion Clasp enters the battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and then 4 and tap Proliferate. So this is the first time people were getting exposed to the Proliferate keyword, and at the time people kind of lost their minds, I think, just like, oh my god, this is so strong. And I would argue, it's still a really strong effect because you've got so many things in here that like have +1/+1 counters. This obviously affects Tezzeret as well because you can proliferate his loyalty counters. Just a really, really good card to include. Like Tezzeret definitely got the better end of the deal in terms of preview cards. It's really just it's hilarious how one-sided it is. And then we got a single NG Chamber, so 2 mana at the beginning of your upkeep. You choose one. You either put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact creature, or put a charge counter on target non-creature artifact. You do have the Everflowing Chance here, which uses charge counters. Most of the times, I think you're just going to be wanting to put +1/+1 counters on artifact creatures. Note that you do have to do something, like you can't. It's not a May. You do have to do one of these things. So but it's like it really doesn't matter because like Elspeth's deck has no artifact creatures. Like you're not going to accidentally put a counter on one of them. Like if you're forced to, you can always put a charge counter on a non-creature artifact that doesn't need it. Like it's not a big deal. But yeah, it's a really good card, I think, at 2 mana. And then we've got 2 Everflowing Chalice, so 0 mana with multi-kicker 2, so you can pay an additional 2 any number of times you cast the spell. Enters the battlefield with a charge counter every time it's kicked, and then you tap to add 1 to your mana pool for every charge counter on it. So yeah, obviously this goes really nice with the Energy Chamber, because then it can just give you a whole bunch of mana. Yeah, really like Everflowing Chalice, good little mana rock, I think. A single Elixir of Immortality, so 1 mana for artifact, you can pay 2 and tap, gain 5 life, and then shuffle Immortality and your graveyard into your library, so just it can essentially completely restock and cast all your stuff again, which is pretty good. Single Moonglove Extract, 3 mana artifact, you can sacrifice to do 2 damage to a creature or player, which is good, just picking off again some of those small little utility creatures in Elspeth's deck. A single Trip Noose, which is, it's a we have Icy Manipulator at home, essentially, but it's cheaper than Icy Manipulator, I suppose. It's only 2, and then, but the ability is more expensive to do. 2 to tap type creature, which is, again, absolutely fine, just a little bit of utility. Right, then we've only got 1 each of these artifact lands, which I feel is like a little bit of a shame. I think we could have pushed to have 2 of each, maybe, but then, I don't know, maybe it would have been too good with all the artifact synergies. So a single's Darksteel Citadel that gives you colours and it's indestructible, and then Seat of the Synod, which is just gives you blue. Yeah, both of these are obviously great. They're artifact lands. Yeah, they enable a whole bunch of shenanigans, so they're great. And then this was the spicy reprint in Tezzeret's deck. So in Elspeth's deck, we had the Swords to Plowshares and Crusade. In here, we got Mishra's Factory. And I think this is, I want to say this is definitely the first time it was in a new frame and possibly with new art as well. I look forward to being corrected, but it was definitely here, and it was kind of a big deal because it's like a really good non-basic land. So taps give you colorless. You can pay 1 to turn it into a 2/2 assembly worker. That's where the assembly worker, the actual card, can benefit from. And you can tap to give an assembly worker +1/+1 to end a turn. So yeah, really good, honestly. Actually, this works as on the defense because you can turn it into an assembly worker and then use its ability on itself to turn it into a 3/3. Actually, you can do that with the other one as well, I suppose. Yeah, Mishra's Factory is a really nice inclusion here. Single Stalking Stones, taps give you colors, or you can pay 6 to turn it into a 3/3 elemental artifact creature permanently. So that's all right. Then it sticks around, obviously benefits all your other things that care about artifacts. And then 20 Island. So overall, I do definitely think Tezzeret's deck is the better of the 2 decks. I just think it just does. I think the card selection is just better overall. I think all the rares in Tezzeret's deck absolutely just like knock Elspeth out of the park. Had a better preview card for Scars Mirrodin, like the Contagion Clasp. Tezzeret, it's tough to say out of the 2 Planeswalkers, which I think is better. I think Tezzeret's abilities go better with his deck. Elspeth's, I think, are better in a vacuum, if that makes sense, whereas Tezzeret's got more synergy with like the contents of his deck. So that's how I would say. I do definitely prefer Tezzeret's decks of the 2, though. I think it's just got way more in terms of like synergies and stuff, whereas Elspeth's really feels all over the place. I managed to get like 1 game with these decks against each other, and Elspeth got absolutely stomped from what I remember. Like, just could not deal with all the artifact shenanigans that Tezzeret's deck is capable of. But I'd love to know what you think about these decks. Like, do you think Tezzeret's is better? Like, or do you like Elspeth's more? Yeah, do you think there's any cards that either deck could have benefited from? Like any changes you'd make? Let me know. Stick a comment down below. I'll give those a read, like I always do. But yeah, we're going to move on to the next dual deck in the next video. So I hope you join me for that. But until then, thanks for watching and listening, and have a great day.